as from Saluda. She actually has a long history of supporting women's rights, children's rights, and the rights of politically oppressed people in Iran. Has defended a number of clients who took part in the Green Movement, and she herself has gotten in trouble with the authorities, and was the co-winner of the, I can't remember, the 2014 or 2013 Sakharov Prize with Jafar Panahi, and so the two of them sitting in the taxi cab together is a moment in the film where the film is really bringing the real world into the filmic world, and is, very clearly making a statement about the relationship of this particular film to the idea of censorship, to the use of film as a medium for supporting human rights and supporting the idea of free expression. And so that's clearly one of the overriding concerns that is woven throughout this film. Seems to me also that matches up with the fact that both Saluda and Panahi have been arrested, convicted, are convicted criminals, weaves into that theme of criminality, obviously, that runs throughout the film. And so when it starts with the individual who we later learn is a mugger who is in the cab, and then he sort of gets in and goes off on his spiel, and there's a sort of like, at the beginning, it's well, what does this have to do with anything? And the film very neatly ties that theme of criminality in, so that we close with, of course, the burglary, theft of the cab itself. And throughout the film there is a great deal of questioning about what is the nature of criminality, where does criminality come from, how do you define it, what is bad criminal and what's a good criminal, and all of those kinds of things. And then one other thing that ties this into the idea of filmmaking is also, to me, the scene that is the sort of climax of that theme of filmmaking, is the scene where Hannah is filming the child, the other child who is not giving the money back, or not quite giving the money back to the bride and groom. He's engaged in criminal activity himself, and of course there are 3 different cameras that are filming that scene. There's Hannah's camera, there's the videographer for the wedding, and then there's Panahi's camera itself. And all 3 cameras give a very different perspective on what is happening there, and all 3 cameras are telling very different stories simultaneously. And so what is the nature of filmmaking itself? How does filmmaking relate to storytelling? What are the stories that are being told with film, and what are the purposes of those stories that are being told with film? And so we have images throughout this, and ideas throughout this movie about what films are, about what films do, what is the purpose of them. They're testaments, they're testimonies, they are a means of relieving catharsis, they are a whole bunch of things. And all of those, it seems to me, get into what this film is really doing, and why I think the Berlin jury, in viewing it, found it worthy of its highest prize. So those are just some ideas to sort of throw out there on the table. But as I said, I don't want to determine the conversation. Just want to sort of open up the floor and see what your reactions to it, or what your ideas about how this film is dealing with any of those themes may be. Yes.
I wonder the part about the child, the niece, and the demands by the teacher of what is a film that can be used. All these restrictions that was put on it, there's not much left to film. So there was the aspect of the undercover, and the woman mustn't touch the man, and all these different laws that we know exist, but we also know that they do the opposite as well. That's called crime, and she wasn't to film anything of that nature.
And also what kind of a film do you end up with when you're making a film under those, with all of those restrictions in place? because it's still possible to make a film with all those restrictions in place. People do all of the time, right? But what is the nature of that thing that comes out as a result? You know, as opposed to what is the nature of the thing that Panahi has produced here. Yeah. Yes.
There was two really provocative things that stood out at me. I think one of them was like the nature of storytelling and how, like when we think of the director, we think of someone like changing. I mean, he did change the angle of the camera a few times, but it was just to like make sure that us as viewers could see everything.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't really manipulating a lot, and I thought that was really powerful. Like he was just showing us things without really manipulating, which was like a kind of like a meta commentary on like what like, I don't know, maybe like the censorship. Like he's not trying to manipulate anything.
Right. And so there is that very documentary style to it, and the documentary style. I mean, it goes against what the regulations are, and those things sort of. It seems like they're very much in tension in the movie, and that documentary style suggests the idea of a capture of reality, right? This is sordid realism.
Right.
What is sordid realism? This is sordid realism. You know, the director is not even manipulating the camera. We don't have. It's a very static camera that we see throughout this film, and so there's only a suggestion of what's happening here as a capture of reality, right? And that seems to me like where when you get real life characters coming in, playing themselves, including Panahi, and yet at the same time there are fictional characters in this at the same time. And so it's documentary, but it's also not documentary at the same time, right? Yeah, sorry.
I'm curious to know, actually, I like some of the interpretation of that. I'm curious to know what you thought, why the movie ended at that specific location at the Ali Spring. How they portrayed it in Northern as a place that if they don't get there at a certain point, they're going to die. And it's ideally, from what I know, is an area that people go to get their wishes granted.
I'm sorry, could you, the last part of what you said was?
It's typically the area is known for getting your wishes granted.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think? I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, why did the movie end at that spot specifically? What were they trying to symbolize by that?
Well, why do you think?
Like, did he get his
That's
wish?
when asked a question I have no answer
like
for,
your
I'll just turn that around.
better. You verbalize the things that go through my head better, so.
Okay, well, I'll try to put on my telepathic hat here, and I mean.
So were those last two motorcycle guys burglars, or were those government agents taking his movie away?
Exactly, my understanding.
That they were government agents taking away the movie.
Yeah, that was my understanding, because he was supposed not to make any movie because he's banned from working.
Right.
And when he was doing it, maybe they were chasing
so
him.
they couldn't find the flash, so they couldn't find the drive that the actual film was on. I see. Yeah, right. Good. Thank you. But at the same time, I mean, why?
It's very possible.
So you were saying this was actually like somebody trying to ban him from creating this? I think this was just showing, like, going back to the same thing. This is a poor taxi driver in the eye of everyone else. So someone is even going back to the mugger guy in the beginning. So someone is even in a worse shape than he is, that he's going after the poor taxi driver and stealing something out of his car. So I didn't see it as someone trying to ban his movie making. I saw it as just someone
Why were they
more
looking for the
desperate
flash
than
drive?
him, breaking into a taxi driver's car to steal his cell phone and whatever. It sounded like they were stealing other stuff too, and then the last thing that they grabbed was the cell phone on the dashboard.
I mean, I that is originally how I saw it, but now that I'm thinking about what, if they're looking for the flash drive, then that says that really, I mean, a flash drive isn't going to, I mean, I guess if they know that it's Panahi, the flash drive might be worthwhile because
we're going to get it later.
What's that?
At the end, he said we're going to get it later.
Right.
So that means that they can follow the.
Right.
Exactly. They were security people, and they.
Right.
I think to lend to that, the movie itself talks about criminality and the intentions behind these criminals. You see in the beginning, the mugger, you don't really get his defense but you see that his rationale, I won't steal from poor people. So that kind of makes him a better criminal than other criminals who would steal from people from the less fortunate. And you see the conversation between Pani and his niece, when he's thinking about the depiction or what her teacher thinks the depiction of good people should be, and going back to his friend who didn't turn in these criminals who mugged him and who beat him. He was presented in the film as a good person.
And they weren't presented as evil people.
And
right?
they weren't presented as evil people.
He sees that they've been able to improve their lives by, with the money that they stole, and so this is not, there is not, some sort of blanket condemnation of criminality. It doesn't seem to me that this film, says that, well, there are just two types of criminals. Those who are political criminals and we're cool, and then there are the burglar type criminals. Yeah. And they're not cool. I mean, it doesn't seem like that is an easy division in this film at all,
and
right?
it's also erasing the idea that the law and justice is not equivalent. And just because someone is a criminal does not mean that they don't deserve justice, or what kind of form that justice should be. And you see that initially with the discussion with the mugger and the teacher, discussing what exactly does justice mean for people who have stolen tire cars. Is that would executing them be justice? She seems to disagree. Even though he is a mugger.
Right.
And I think where you get the intentions stops is at the end of the movie. You don't really know. I mean, I wouldn't say I can conclusively tell you whether they were government agents or whether they were just regular muggers, because you don't hear much. You just get sort of implications, and that's where it stops as far as the criminal, as revealing the criminal mind, I guess.
But I mean, also it seems to, it equates government agents with criminals.
Yes.
Right. And so, who's the criminal here, right? Yeah. Yes.
I cannot appreciate the movie the way you did. Okay. I thought it was kind of contrived, but well put together. Okay. However, I looked at it looking at the life of people in Iran. Okay, it seemed we have sanctions on Iran, and it seems to me they were not short of anything. I had the impression, and it could have been like any American city. Not any American city, but it could have been an American city. What I saw, so
it's a very modern, cosmopolitan, city that we got a chance to see.
So you got to look into that kind of. I mean, I had a different picture of the way life is in Tehran. Okay, so that's what I sort of got out of it.
I mean, I think that Panahi's movies generally present a modern Iran, and I think that there is a great love of modernity and of Iranian modernity in many of his films, and I don't think that this is a very contemporary place, and I think that that's part of the power of this film and a couple of his other films that I've seen, is his ability to represent a cosmopolitanism and a modernity that's not American, and that is a fully, I don't know how fully, because I've never lived in Iran, but I think that it is an Iranian kind of modernity rather than an American modernity that we're getting in the films,
I wasn't expecting to see abject poverty, as you say, only because Iran is still an oil exporter, and Iran was one of the most modern countries when the Shah fell and everything else. So I wasn't expecting that, but what it showed me was that how people in a repressed society, because you hear the character keep saying how they don't want to, they say they a lot, they don't want the authorities, how they just become accustomed to living that way. because everybody just seems to have their normal lives. They go about their normal lives. They get their taxis. They take their fish to the spring. They sell their CDs and videos.
Of course.
They've just, it seems to me the interesting part. They're just accustomed to.
Well,
You know,
I mean, what's the amazing
Khomeini
thing?
running the country, and
The amazing thing to me
They see
is,
the latest movies and
they see, you know,
Right.
they find a way to just go
Right.
through life.
the amazing thing to me is witnessing the courage in those circumstances. You know, I mean, I think both Panahi and Saluda, I mean, at their appearance in the film and what they say in the film, I mean, they're taking risks in what they're doing and in what they're saying, and they seem to be, at least the movie presents them as, being fairly casual in their willingness to take the kinds of risks that they're taking. And so to me, it's not necessarily the casualness of everyday life in a modern city that stands out to me. To me, it's more just the casualness of being willing to, you know, speak when there are potentially like really, really harsh consequences for that speech. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think it was, I don't know, really admirable and very like Iranian, like when she was saying, oh, you know, about that like analogy between being barred from the Lawyers Association and his, like, the same thing happening with him in the film arena. And she was just like, how does that feel? How does that feel? But she was saying it like with a joke and a lightheartedness, and so that casual. You know.
Did she say how does that feel, or how would that feel?
Oh, how would it feel if the
Yeah, how would it feel?
if the Society of
Yeah,
Cinematographers had
makes a difference.
was the right? Yeah.
Because then we would understand that he shouldn't make a movie, but it's not too sure, because it seemed like she was proposing an analogy of what's happening to her, what could happen to him, saying, well, how would that feel? Which I'm not sure. She said, you know, it's like you cannot make the movie. So.
Yeah.
But they didn't seem particularly threatened, like they would have thrown in jail and killed them. They didn't feel that way. They felt that they were all in jail. They'd be put away and come back.
Yeah, she actually had. I mean, when she was talking about the hunger strike of I'm going to mispronounce it, but I'm sorry. Thank you. Goncha. She herself has you know, engaged in a couple of hunger strikes while she was in jail. One was a fairly extended one. She got very sick as a result of that. So I mean, they've and you know, he was talking about his interrogator, and he's not talking about that in theory. He's talking about that, you know, as an experience that actually happened to him. And yet they maintain the sense of humor about it, and that's pretty striking to me. Yeah.
I mean, it's like Gandhi went on a hunger strike, but people go on hunger strikes because, not because they're going to be killed, but because they don't have freedom. And they're in captivity. So, but they felt, it just felt like they would go in and come out. Like, it wasn't that they would be killed, or to have their fingers broken, or that kind of thing. It didn't seem that way.
Yeah.
Also, some people were killed. I mean, I was born and raised in Iran. These are famous people, and I think they are more lucky because the media know them, and you know, it helps them. When people know you, and you know, even in the U.S., they know Panahi and they know Sotoudeh, and they talk about them, they support them, so it's better for them. They have a better situation. But there were some cases that some people were killed, in, you know, when they were having some torture in the jail. So yeah, that also happens in Iran.
No, I think, Andy, you made a terrific point about the courage and the way they express it. When Panahi, just in passing, said, I heard a voice that sounded like my interrogator. It reminds us that scar doesn't heal. It's always there. But at the same time, they're unwilling to give into it, to concede to the terror that creates. And I think that casual courage is stunning throughout the film.
Yeah.
And you know what? In fact, probably every character except the two elderly ladies, in some way, which was interesting to me, is challenging authority. Because the mugger is challenging authority by questioning punishment of the car bandit. The teacher is questioning authority because she's questioning Sharia law and how people should be put to death. The CD guy is questioning authority by selling underground black market CDs. The guy that's dying from the motorcycle accident is questioning authority by saying, look, I don't want my brothers to get my house. I want my wife to get my house. Even though the law says my wife can't get my house, I want to film myself saying she needs to have my house. So he's questioning the system. The niece is questioning the teacher, telling her how to make the movie. Why do I have to do it this way? Why can't I do sordid realism? Why all these rules? The tie and no tie versus the tie. They're all questioning authority in a bit of a way.
Even the wife. Even the wife trying to get the video in order to use it.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Later on, or probably kill him in his sleep, and then like, oh look, he left me everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just as, she would have the video at that point. Right?
But I like the last scene because if it were government agents stealing the camera, technically they're stealing, and it goes sort of back to the beginning of the conversation where should these people be hanged for stealing tires? Well, the government is stealing a camera from this man who's trying to make a film, or not even that, a taxi driver just stealing, like whether they were government agents or just people stealing from the car. What does that say about them? What does it say about what would happen to them? It says a lot. It's a huge commentary to end the film on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about that ending is that it's happening as Panahi and his niece are going to give back the purse to the ladies, which is a nice thing, which would have been okay to screen. But it's interrupted by this moment of violence, of burglary.
Great point, right. That's the one screenable moment in the entire film, right, is what doesn't get captured on the
camera. There's like a rose there and everything, and then they break into the car.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So what has happened since the film's been released tonight in Iran?
The only thing that I know is that I don't know anything. The only thing I know is nothing. But I know that I know nothing. So there's some Socratic virtue in that, I believe. Right?
He's not in No, he's not in prison. He actually, the Iranian government kind of turned a blind eye to the fact, because the film won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival, and Hannah actually accepted the award. She went out, and if you check our Facebook, we posted the video. You can see her kind of like crying on stage or something. It's very sweet, but so it's being recognized as being played at film festivals that obviously has U.S. distribution. So the Iranian government is aware that it's happening, but they're just not acknowledging it as an existing thing, because it wouldn't look good for a film that was the top prize winner at Berlin to then be shunned for no reason. So they're kind of just like acting like it doesn't exist.
Well, I'm sure it's being sold under market.
Well, right. Of course, it's being sold all over the black market, and I mean they'll probably do what they've done with previous movies, which is just not allowed to be screened in Iran.
Right, and the irony is that guys like the guy who was selling the DVDs are going to be the ones who have to sell the DVDs at Jafar Panahi.
Right.
They didn't seem to be threatened.
And
they did it out in the open. They weren't threatened about selling the movies, the man with the movies and the other man with the CDs. They weren't hiding anywhere. They were doing it right on the street.
Oh, it's not on the street. It was a little bit underground. It was a little bit shady.
I mean, this is a huge city. It's a complicated, complex society with all kinds of interactions. So, I mean, people are going to be scalping tickets. I mean, it's not. Right. Right. Exactly.
They have to make a living, Life must go on.
Yeah.
Take your chance.
I mean, we were talking about how they're so brave and everything for doing these things, but what I found interesting was that there are moments during the film where I'm like, was this actually scripted or is this reality? It reminded me a lot of, there's another Iranian movie called Close Up. It's a lot like this,
Yeah, you can
it
see
brings up the same-
Kiarostami's
yeah.
influence, you know, very much in.
I know they're friends, too.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
actually worked on films with Kiarostami.
Yeah.
That's
And
kind
he
of where
signed
got started.
the petition to get him released too.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, it's just the contrast between what's potentially reality and what's potentially scripted is running through my mind throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because there are moments that clearly just scream like this is not real,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are other moments that don't. But
Seem completely unrehearsed
Right.
and impromptu.
right,
Yeah.
like the wounded guy getting in the cab and everything.
Mhm.
That's whole. It's both harrowing and almost kind of darkly comedic in a way.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And then,
yeah, it
and then
is.
later
That's
on,
right.
and like what's apparently the same day, she calls back Panahi and he's like, and she's like, I thought he was better. She's like, oh no, she is. And I'm like, this is all just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of the movie that I think calls into question what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, that sort of docufiction style is very characteristic of a lot of Iranian film, you know. And it's something that different critics and theorists have talked about. And that especially when you balance that aesthetic against the you know aesthetic that is being forced upon Hannah by her teacher. That it's kind of one of the statements that's been made is that it's kind of a radical gesture to document a human being in history, and that the docufiction style, you know, really emphasizes the you know, an individual human being, you know, existing in history, as opposed to the idealized image of man and woman, you know, as the sort of heroes in the sort of mythic sort of landscape, right? And so that's one of the, at least that's what's been said about one of the effects of that particular filmic style, right? And the sense that, you know, I mean, you have people, you know, with flaws, uncertainties, who are trying their best, make mistakes, you know, who are just depicted as, you know, these individuals who are living their lives, you know, and that in and of itself, in a regime that is enforcing an idea of everything must be presented as an idealized image, is kind of a radical gesture, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It was interesting that every woman that I remember wore a scarf over her head,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't see a man with a beard,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I found no beards was kind of surprising, and also I thought their society was changing,
Mm-hmm.
and that not everybody was wearing that headscarf thing.
Yes.
Well, I know that in that particular region, from even pre-Islam, they still wore veils, and it was just part of culture. So that doesn't necessarily mean, I think, whether it's gearing toward progression or not, whether they're wearing the veil or not. So I don't know if all the women wearing the veil versus the men not having a beard is so much relevant toward each other, you know, with each other. Because the whole region, whether they're Muslim or not, a lot of them still wear a kind of scarf over their head, or you know.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Which is mainly
I'm sorry? Well, she said that you know, it's not necessarily that you know, there. I'm going to try to summarize that it's dependent, it's characteristic of a particular region. You know, exactly the ways in which, you know, people will style themselves, right? And in relation to these kinds of guidelines.
But I've always thought Iranians were a little more modern than the rest of the Middle East in terms of, you don't see the beards as much, and you see the veils, but sometimes you'll see hair coming out of the veil. You didn't see a lot of the burqas in the movie. I mean, you saw some. You saw a few with the full thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because Iranians, my understanding, they're not really Arab. They're Persians. and they have a more of a, I don't know, I guess a different outlook. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Because what happened after the revolution, I mean, it was not the whole story.
Right.
And, you know, it was like 37 years ago. But before that, you know, our parents can remember that, we can hear from that, and, you know, we also, you know, have the opportunity to see what's going on in the whole world. So, you know, it's not just whatever they impose. So we can see what's going on in the whole world. So, yeah.
Because
That's
under the
why-
Shah, the society was a little more secular, and so they were a little different than the rest of the Middle East.
I mean, not in terms of the political freedom. We didn't have political freedom in the time of the Shah,
Right,
but
right.
you know, other liberties we had. So,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't mean that you know people are accepting this. You know, they are always resistant to what's going on.
Right.
I mean, having a scarf is something legal. They have to do it. You know,
Right.
in order to go out of the house, you have to cover
Right.
your hair.
Right.
But then you can resist to that. You know.
Well,
By-
right,
by
and you can
using something
go to
more
soccer
colorful,
matches
you know,
even though you're not allowed to,
exactly,
or
exactly.
you know, and
like the story of
right.
movie
Right, outside, right,
whatever
But
yeah.
then
talking
again,
about.
there's 4 journalists in prison and nobody seems to know why. So you have that on the other hand. And we're not getting anywhere with that so far. The trial went on and they don't know that they made a decision, but nobody knows whether he's guilty or he's not guilty. That's been in the paper and the news in limbo.
Yeah, I mean those are you know the conditions of you know that repressive regime, and so you know there's that mixture of, I think you see as a representation in this film and you see it in other films, you know, you have that mixture of you know this full participation in the modern world that is occurring in people's everyday lives, and yet you know there is a sort of specter that looms there, and I think that you know they talk about that in the film in terms of you know you're free and you're out in the streets, but it's like they're always watching you, and they let you know they do little things every once in a while to let you know that they're watching you, and so it's like you're out of jail, but you're just in jail. You know,
And they do little things like break into your car and steal your flashlight.
Right.
So, you're a film actor. I don't know nothing about any of this stuff. So, docufiction, what is that, and who were actors and who were not actors? What did I just see here?
I don't know exactly. Can't break down the entire cast in terms of who were actors and who was not. You probably know that better. I mean.
And how much of a coincidence was it that the lawyer is standing on the side of the road when he's driving by with the roses and the niece notices, or how much of that is coincidence and how much is real?
And when you talk about actors versus non-actors, realize also that one of the characteristics of this particular style of filmmaking is oftentimes to use non-professional actors.
Yeah.
You know, and so in order to capture...
To use non-professional actors as actors?
As actors,
okay.
Right. So the question is like who's playing themselves and who's playing someone else, is your question.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because that's a question that's been asked not only by you or by me, but by A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
Right.
It hasn't been revealed. There's no cast list that you can kind of go see it. I go to IMDb. There's no one.
Right.
Because they can't be because it's
just Panahi.
Because I don't know if I would put my real niece in that situation. If my niece is staying behind and she's going to this school, I don't know if I want her on film questioning her teacher and what her teacher is saying about viewable or screenable versus non-screenable.
Right.
You know, is that really his niece?
And it is okay. That is his niece.
Yeah.
It is his niece.
I'm not sure that she actually lives in Iran.
Oh, okay.
She does.
They're using her innocence.
Sure.
I mean, you can always use the excuse of saying she's just a child. She didn't know any better. And like the way that she portrayed, the way she was talking, even with the question that she was asking was very deep. But at the end of it, she always had that childish look of, I don't know what to think of this. So you can completely attribute that she's a child. She just didn't know any better. So technically, and she was under the age of 9, which is the legal age to gross to actually be reliable for anything. So based on
Well, how about the mugger? I mean,
although just as a caveat to that, one of the things that Saluda has done is defended clients who have been convicted of crimes when they were minors, capital crimes when they were minors,
under the age of 18 for crimes, but 9 from the Sharia law as far as the Islamic version of it. That, you know, they're going to be held in a Sharia law,
okay.
like against the government. But legal criminal acts under the age of 18, how would be there?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
even putting the mugger on there, and he's admitting he's a mugger. If I were the government and I'm watching it, I see at least 3 criminals I can go after. I can go after the DVD guy. I can go after the mugger guy. I can go after the DVD guy's friend.
I mean, I'm going to guess the mugger's not really a mugger in real life.
I was just going to say, he's an actor.
Although, well,
You think the
a
mugger was an actor?
non-professional actor. Although, you know, just having said that, it's entirely possible that Panahi, as part of the game of this movie, you know, goes out and finds an actual mugger, you know, in order to play the mugger on the film, because the question is, what does a brigand look like? And it's like, well, this is, you know, I mean, he's, you know, he could give us an image. I mean, but that's exactly what this movie does, is it plays with, you know, those sorts of, you know, that desire, right? Yes.
I kind of found the mugger to be the most smug and entitled character in the movie. He was introduced early. But one of the kind of the subversive nature of it, I kept noticing. You know, every time Panahi exited the cab, I suddenly was suspicious that he was going to do something inappropriate, and there was this very dynamic, like every time someone exited the cab, are they going to jump in traffic or steal something or commit a crime? So there was this suspicion of all the characters when they exited, and I kept feeling that.
So little happens in this movie that someone exiting a cab becomes a dramatic moment.
Yes.
And I mean, just to add to that too, those are also the moments when usually we're getting a different camera and we're getting the images from a different camera, because there's a few moments in the film where we get images from a different camera. You know, so I mean, it's interesting that you know it's Hannah's camera, you know, or it's the iPhone, you know, that the video from the iPhone that we're getting at moments of exiting the cab, you know.
I mean to cut the discussion short, but we do need to wrap up for the evening. So if we want like one last thought, and then we'll end on that.
Well, let's one more question.
Yes.
One more question in the back.
It
Yes.
wasn't a question. It was we were talking about the criminality, and you know how can the mugger system out there, he really is a mugger, and like you know the system or whoever's watching can go ahead and take them down. But I think who they are more concerned of are people like Panahi. Panahi, yeah. I think that they're more concerned with that type of criminality than the everyday, you know, kind of like, oh, let me steal this purse. And I think those, they don't, I mean, I don't know because I don't live there. I don't know. But I think to be able to, even if he really was a mugger or not, I don't know if he was an actor or not. So, but even if he was a real mugger, perhaps there's a sense of there is more danger for those who are against the system with a real cause than those who are just against it because they just want to kind of like, you know, just get ahead in a sneaky way or whatnot.
And Panahi says in the movie that, you know, the brigands were executed because video of their activities got out on the net, and so they created an embarrassment for the government, and so that's why they were executed, not because the mugging in itself would have been worthy of that execution, right? So I think that goes along with what you're saying there. Yeah.
I was asking more from the perspective of the director and just the ethics of making a movie or doing a docu-fiction movie.
Yeah.
And using actors as real people, and if you're putting real people, you're kind of exposing them. They get left behind.
They're making
the movie
decisions
gets made,
too, though.
and they get left behind in
he's
Iran.
not, you know, I mean, except for, you know, I mean, he's you know, I mean, he's got Hannah who he casts, and maybe she's not old enough to make decisions for herself, but apparently she's legally covered. The adults who are in the film are making decisions, you know, and so if they decide to do that, then that's what they've decided to do.
If they know.
So, thank you
Thank you
everyone
all
for
for coming.
coming.
Would you join me in thanking